Imagine building something with your own hands, not just to protect your property, but your entire neighborhood, only to have it torn down by the very people who claim to protect the community. That's exactly what happened here. And what followed? It wasn't just frustrating. It was devastating. It all started quietly, with one homeowner noticing a problem. Every year, when the rainy season hit, water would start creeping in. Not just puddles or minor runoff, but rising water, pooling in backyards, turning lawns into swamps, and creeping dangerously close to foundations. Most people just dealt with it. Some built small barriers. Others laid out sandbags. But one man had a bigger idea. A better one. Instead of patching the problem year after year, he decided to fix it once and for all. He spent his own money, his own time, and weeks of effort to build a dam. Not a giant concrete wall, but a well-thought-out, fully functional water diversion system. It looked natural, blended with the surroundings, and worked like a charm. The next rain came, and the water didn't stand a chance. It flowed neatly away from the homes. The yards stayed dry. Basements stayed clean. Neighbors even started to notice the difference. But then came the letter. A short, cold notice from the Homeowners Association. An authorized structure. That's what they called it. No thanks, no appreciation, not even a question. Just a demand: remove the dam immediately. It didn't make sense. This wasn't a hazard. It wasn't an eyesore. It was solving a problem the HOA had ignored for years. But they didn't care. Rules were rules. Or at least that's what they claimed. Some say it was about power. Others say it was about control. Maybe someone on the board didn't like being outshined by a resident taking initiative. Maybe it was pride. Either way, the homeowner was ordered to dismantle the structure. He pushed back. He pleaded, calmly at first. He offered to bring in an engineer to certify the dam. He even suggested modifying it if needed. But every offer was met with a wall of silence, or worse, threats of legal action. The HOA wouldn't budge. So, under pressure, he gave in. The dam came down. And just weeks later, the rain came back. It started with heavy clouds, thick and low. A steady drizzle soaked the streets. But by nightfall, that drizzle turned into a full-blown downpour. For 3 days, the skies didn't let up. The ground couldn't handle it. And with no dam to hold it back, the water rushed in. Fast. It didn't just reach the yards this time. It swallowed them. Entire lawns were lost under muddy waves. Water poured into crawl spaces. Furniture floated in living rooms. Cars were ruined. Foundations were damaged. And in the middle of the chaos, no one could pretend they didn't see what caused it. Some neighbors remembered the dam. Some even admitted they had doubted it before, but not now. They saw the difference it had made. And they saw what happened without it. But the most painful part. It was avoidable. All of it. And yet, at that moment, the people who caused the problem were nowhere to be found. The HOA went silent. Not a word. Not a single acknowledgement. Not even an offer to help clean up. The same organization that tore the dam down now refused to face the mess left behind. And the homeowners? They were left with nothing but damage, bills, and questions no one would answer. And one man, just one, stood watching all of it unfold. He wasn't angry anymore. He was tired. Because he knew what could have been prevented. He had tried. But no one listened. And now, the entire neighborhood was paying the price. Years before the flood, before the rain turned driveways into rivers, there were signs, subtle ones. The backyard always got a little soggy after storms. Water drained slowly. Grass took days to dry out. Most people shrugged it off. Just part of living here, they said. But one man didn't. He watched the patterns. Rain came from a specific direction. It pooled in one low-lying area, his property, mostly. Over time, the soil became loose and unstable. When the rainy season hit hard one year, the water nearly reached his foundation. He knew it would only get worse. So, he started planning. He didn't want to just patch the issue with sandbags. He wanted a permanent fix, not just for himself but for anyone downhill from him. After talking to a few landscapers, reading up on water diversion, and walking the property line dozens of times, he came up with the solution: a small earthen dam combined with a natural trench system. It would hold and redirect runoff without disturbing the land or neighbors. He paid for the whole thing himself. No loans. No assistance. He used natural materials, rocks, clay, landscaping fabric, to create a dam that blended right into the slope. To the untrained eye, it looked like part of the hill. But it worked. The next heavy rain hit, and the water behaved differently. It didn't pool. It didn't creep toward the house. It flowed around, neatly and calmly. For the first time in years, there was no water damage. No cleanup. Just calm after the storm. The neighbors noticed. A few asked about it. Some praised his effort. Others, of course, stayed quiet. But one person on the HOA board took a picture. And that was the beginning of the trouble. A week later, the letter came. It wasn't personal. Just a printed notice stuck in the mailbox: violation of community code, unauthorized land alteration. No warning. No phone call. Just a demand to remove the structure within 14 days or face daily fines. Confused, the homeowner showed up at the next HOA meeting. He thought maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe they just didn't know what the dam really did. Maybe if he explained it, they'd understand. But the board didn't want to listen. The dam wasn't on the approved plans. It hadn't gone through their process. No one on the board had actually come to see it up close. They said it might redirect water onto other properties even though it did the opposite. They refused to look at the videos he brought. They dismissed the expert opinion he printed out. That's not the point, one board member said. You can't just build things on your own. He asked for an exception. He asked for a hearing. He offered to bring in a licensed engineer at his own cost to evaluate it. Every time, the answer was the same: no. The board seemed more concerned about the rule than the reason it existed. They didn't care that it worked. They cared that he hadn't asked permission first. That was their issue. Some neighbors tried to stay out of it. Others quietly supported him. But no one spoke up in public. The HOA's word, in that neighborhood, was final. They had a history of forcing residents to repaint fences, replant shrubs, even remove playsets they deemed visually unappealing. This dam was their next target. The pressure ramped up. Letters turned into fines. $50 per day. Then $100. Then legal threats. Eventually, a notice came that the HOA would take action themselves if the structure wasn't removed. With no legal leverage and no community support, he gave in. It was either tear it down or risk a drawn-out legal battle he couldn't afford. So, he took it apart, stone by stone. All the effort, the time, the money, gone in a weekend. He didn't say much afterward. He just waited. Because deep down, he knew the rain would come again. And when it did, there would be nothing standing between the water and the homes that sat quietly below. The rain didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in, like it always did, soft at first. A few days of overcast skies, a constant light drizzle, the kind of weather people call cozy. But those who'd lived in the neighborhood long enough knew what it meant. It was the beginning. By the third day, the wind picked up. The drizzle turned to a heavy pour. Water started flowing off rooftops in thick sheets. Gutters overflowed. Streets turned slick and shiny. The kind of rain that didn't let up, not even overnight. And this time, something was different. Something was missing. The dam was gone. At first, people didn't think about it. They were too busy grabbing umbrellas, pulling cars into garages, texting neighbors about school closures. But one person was watching the runoff. The man who built the dam knew exactly what was coming. He stood by the edge of his yard, watching the water collect in the spot where the dam used to stand. And it wasn't just pooling, it was racing downhill. By morning, it was too late. Water surged past property lines. Grass turned into mud in minutes. Yards became shallow lakes. Retaining walls groaned under pressure. Basements, once dry, filled quickly. Home security cameras caught moments of chaos, floodlights flickering in the dark, People wading through knee-deep water, cars stuck halfway out of garages, wheels spinning in the mud. In the span of just one night, the entire lower end of the neighborhood was underwater. And people started talking. Some were shocked. Others angry. But a few remembered. They remembered the dam. They remembered how the water never pooled like this when it was there. They remembered how one man tried to stop this, warned them, built something with his own time and money not for attention, but because he cared. Now, the same HOA that forced him to destroy it had nothing to say. No emails. No alerts. No official statements. Not even a suggestion on what to do next. Homeowners were left to scramble. Sandbags arrived late. Insurance calls were placed, most with long hold times and uncertain answers. Furniture was ruined. Drywall was soaked. Families stayed in hotels while crews worked to pump out the water and tear out the mold. Meanwhile, the one house that had once sat just above the dam, the builder's home, stayed mostly dry. A few puddles in the yard, nothing more. The flood passed around it, just as he had originally designed. It was proof that the solution had worked. Proof that had been ignored. One neighbor finally spoke up. She went online and shared the story, writing a post that detailed what happened about the dam, the HOA, and how they forced it to be removed. It spread fast. People outside the neighborhood started asking questions. Why would an HOA take down something that clearly prevented flooding? Why didn't they listen? Some speculated it was pride. Others blamed poor leadership. But those inside the community knew it was about control. The HOA didn't like that someone took action without their stamp of approval. It didn't matter that it worked. It only mattered that it challenged their authority. And now the cost was clear. Tens of thousands in property damage. Families displaced. Neighborhood trust broken. All because a board didn't want to admit they were wrong. But the most unbelievable part. Even after everything, the HOA didn't take responsibility. In a private email to one homeowner, they claimed the flooding was a natural disaster and that the previous dam would have made little to no difference. That's when people really got angry. Because they had seen the difference. They had lived it. The dam wasn't just a pile of dirt and stones, it had been the one barrier between calm and chaos. And now, the damage was done. The man who built the dam? He didn't say much. Just went back to work, fixing up what he could, helping neighbors where possible. But everyone could see it in his eyes, he had warned them. He had tried. And no one could deny it anymore. The skies eventually cleared. The rain stopped. But the damage stayed. Mud streaks stained garage doors. Piles of soaked drywall and ruined furniture lined the sidewalks, turning the quiet streets into a scene that looked more like a disaster zone than a suburban neighborhood. Restoration trucks came and went. Fans and dehumidifiers hummed behind boarded-up windows. Neighbors helped each other where they could, but frustration lingered. Everyone was asking the same question: how did it come to this? Most people blamed the storm until they started connecting the dots. They remembered the meetings, the warnings, the dam. Quiet conversations turned into loud discussions. Didn't that guy have something set up to stop this? Why was it removed again? Who made that decision? One neighbor, tired of waiting for answers, dug through old HOA newsletters. Sure enough, the record was there: a formal notice about the unauthorized dam being removed for non-compliance with landscaping standards. That was all. No mention of flood prevention. No mention of the homeowner's warnings. Just a vague justification buried in official language. It didn't sit right with anyone anymore. People started speaking out. At the next HOA meeting, it wasn't the usual quiet room. It was packed. Some residents demanded explanations. Others wanted resignations. But the board didn't have much to offer. A few shrugged, claiming they followed policy. One member even said, no one could have predicted the extent of the storm. But that wasn't true. Someone had predicted it. Someone had built something to stop it. And they made him tear it down. The man who built the dam didn't show up to that meeting. He didn't need to. His point had already been made loud and clear. But even then, something strange happened. The HOA didn't offer to fix the damage. No apologies. No reimbursement plans. Just silence. They slipped back into their usual routine, as if nothing had changed. Except everything had. The trust was gone. Neighbors started organizing outside of the HOA. Small meetings at kitchen tables. Group chats. People who once stayed quiet about neighborhood issues now had plenty to say. And most of it centered around how decisions were being made, who was making them, and what it meant when logic and safety got ignored in favor of control. One resident, a retired civil engineer, reviewed photos of the dam that had been taken before it was dismantled. He said it was simple but effective, well designed, especially for a private project. He went further, writing a letter to the board stating that, had the dam been left in place, the water damage could have been significantly reduced or avoided altogether. That letter was ignored. But people read it. Neighbors shared it. And the mood kept shifting. For the first time in years, residents started questioning the way things had always been done. Some even considered legal action. But the man who built the dam wasn't interested in lawsuits. He just wanted people to learn something. He didn't rebuild the dam. Not yet. But he did walk a few of his neighbors through the original design, how it worked, why it worked, and what went wrong when it was removed. He wasn't showing off. He just wanted them to understand. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people paid attention this time, things would be different next season. The storm had exposed more than just poor planning, it had exposed the cost of blind rule following, the danger of ignoring those with experience, and the failure that happens when leadership stops listening to the people they're supposed to protect. And while the water had drained, and the sun had returned, something else remained beneath the surface, something more powerful than frustration. A shift. A realization. That real protection doesn't come from paper rules and boardroom decisions. It comes from action. From people willing to build, to speak up, to stand their ground when no one else will. Even when it's unpopular. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when the ones in charge say no. Time passed, but the memories of that flood didn't fade. Every time a new cloud rolled over the hills or a weather alert buzzed on someone's phone, there was a quiet tension. People started checking their yards more often. Some installed sump pumps. Others laid down gravel or dug shallow trenches around their homes. Precautions that never seemed necessary before now felt urgent. But no matter what they did, it was always in the back of their minds, what if that dam had stayed? Neighbors who once dismissed it as overkill now wished they'd spoken up. Some even approached the man who built it, apologizing in their own quiet ways. A few offered to help if he ever decided to rebuild. He listened. He nodded. But he didn't say much. Because he knew the real issue wasn't just about the dam. It was about how people respond when someone tries to do the right thing and how those in power handle being challenged. The HOA tried to move on. They returned to enforcing fence colors, mailbox standards, and trash bin placements. But it didn't feel the same. People weren't as quick to comply. Some started pushing back, asking more questions, showing up at meetings. And it wasn't out of rebellion. It was out of realization. They saw what happened when rules mattered more than results. When doing things by the book came at the expense of common sense. And no matter how many new policies the board pushed, they couldn't undo the truth that had unfolded in plain sight. The damage bills were still coming in. Some homeowners were deep into repair work, tearing up floors, replacing insulation, repainting rooms. Others were still waiting on insurance. A few had to move out altogether, staying with family or in rental homes while contractors worked. The flood hadn't just damaged property, it had disrupted lives. Birthdays were missed. Holidays were spent away from home. Kids were shaken. Pets were stressed. It left a mark that no amount of paint or new flooring could cover up. And people talked. More than ever before. On walks, during mail runs, at neighborhood cookouts, everyone had something to say. Some shared regret. Others vented frustration. But there was a growing sense of unity that hadn't existed before. Because now, they understood something that used to be invisible. What happens when one voice is silenced for the sake of order? One homeowner, a young father with 2 small kids, said it best during a casual chat at a local coffee shop. "I used to think the HOA was here to protect us. But now I think it's up to us to protect each other." That hit hard. Because it was true. The man who built the dam still didn't ask for recognition. He didn't brag. He didn't file complaints. He just kept his head down and helped where he could. He handed out sandbags before the next light storm. Gave tips on drainage. Checked in on elderly neighbors. Quietly doing what the HOA claimed to stand for, protecting the community. And it didn't go unnoticed. People started asking if he'd ever consider joining the HOA. Some encouraged him to run for the board. He smiled, shook his head, and politely declined. Not out of fear. But maybe because he knew that real leadership didn't need a title. Others started stepping up. Not just with their voices, but with their actions. They cleaned gutters for neighbors who couldn't. They cleared debris from drains before storms. They planned together. Prepared together. The neighborhood had changed, not just physically, but mentally. People were awake now. And that's the strange thing about disasters. They destroy, yes. But sometimes, they also reveal. They strip away the surface and show you what's underneath: who cares, who doesn't, and who's willing to act when no one else will. The dam was gone, but what it represented had taken root in something stronger than soil. It had planted an idea. That sometimes, one person can see the danger coming. One person can act. One person can make a difference even if no one listens at first.